this podcast, we will be looking at storytellers, stories, and the reasons that oral storytelling is important in our world today. You would think with all the technology we have available that stories do not have a place anymore, but they are needed more than ever. For in storytelling is where we find truth, we find reality, and we find the heart of what it is to be human. Welcome to the heart of storytelling. My name is Alyssa Curtain, and let's go on an adventure. Welcome to this episode of the heart of storytelling. In today's interview, I spoke with Tamas Ozwald from Tasmania via Hungary, and Tamas gave me a really great insight into his background and how he sort of evolved into becoming a storyteller and what he's doing now. Particularly interesting is what he's doing with food and story, which I found fascinating. So thank you for joining me on the podcast today, and I hope you enjoy the interview. Well, welcome to this episode of The Heart of Storytelling. Today's guest, we have Tamas Ozwald, who is in Tasmania. Hi, Tamas.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, good. So I'd like to start by telling everyone a bit about how you got started in storytelling and why.
Good. Oh, okay. Back to the basics and the foundation. So I am Hungarian. And I was always involved in folklore, all sorts of different ways when I lived back in Hungary. So I played Hungarian folk music, which is a little bit different than you think about folk music here in Australia, because in Hungary you still, or in Transylvania and some part of Hungary, you can still find those old 70, 80 years old people who never left the village, and you could still learn from them. So we kind of like much closer to the roots. Maybe not anymore, but it was when I did it 20 something years ago. So we still had those elders to learn. So I learned folk music because I fall in love in a girl, which is actually, that's how I did my whole life, fall in love. And kind of like that took me from one point to another. Anyway, so there was this girl who was singing, and I accidentally started to play folk music without even wanting to do it, but I wanted to impress her, so I did, and I really liked it. And then I started to study contemporary art, and you mean like the most contemporary faculty in the Academy of Fine Art in Hungary, a lot of conceptual art and a lot of really crazy modern stuff. But I was so fed up at one point with all of that talking about things, and yeah, I just didn't feel really good there. So I looked around a little bit, what can I do? And I found a school where I could learn wood carving, traditional Hungarian folk wood carving. So, playing folk music still, doing wood carving, I really immersed myself in that one. And I even started to dress like a guy from I don't know, from 200 years ago. So it was really weird. I mean, I was young, I tried to find my way. And I always wearing hat, which I still do actually. This is very unusual. I have like a baseball hat today. Usually I'm wearing a hat still because that's comfortable, but I was wearing a hat and I looked like a guy from the past, which is really weird. And then I traveled all around Europe. I lived all around different countries. And then again, because I lived in Germany, and because a girl, I moved back to Hungary. And she was involved in street theater, and because we got together very quickly and everything happened so quickly, she got pregnant, and then she was a stilt walker, and then she said, I have 2 more jobs to do, and I can't do it when I'm pregnant. It's so dangerous, so you have to do this. And I was laughing. I can't, like, you're kidding me, stilts and it's dangerous. And I said, so she taught me how to walk on stilts, and I really enjoyed it. And then I started to work with other street theater companies, and then I established my own little company. And then I was like, okay, what I will do, like, do I just write something for myself, like short funny pieces to perform on the street? And then in Hungary, I think we were very fortunate because in the 80s, the Hungarian television decided to work a lot with Hungarian folklore, and they made this amazing series of animated short movies about folktales, with folktales, and I think they reached 100 until now, and they just went all, you know, just around and around in the Hungarian television. So even if you were not so much in folklore, not even your family has nothing to do in folklore, but you had the TV at home, then you saw those. And so if you ask my generation and even maybe a little bit younger, that you can say, do you know that folktale? They said, yeah, of course I know. So it was just a fortunate situation. So for us, it was quite something we know. And then when I looked for material to perform with my little street theater company, it was a very natural step to choose stories, folktales or legends. But I was still not a storyteller as on the way that you and me we understand it when you are standalone on a stage or in front of people and just talk. So I had the props, I had a musician, we have the costumes and things like that. But we did on the street. It was very much like when you tell a folk tale, you work with the audience. So it went for me just like that. I never learned that. It was just happened. I was so much into it, and it was really great. But then we wanted to leave Hungary with my wife, and we have two little kids because the populist situation was a bit too funny. I mean, not dangerous or anything, but we said this is not really maybe the environment we want to have the kids to have the first years of their education. And we were also thinking, both of us artists. My wife studied in the same wood carving school that I studied, so we were both in art and things, so totally useless people. So we said, maybe we should try another country. And we looked around, and it turned out countries which we would like to go, and we didn't want to go to United Kingdom because I already lived in London for a while. So the other countries, they all looked very strict in their regulations and rules of immigration, like even temporary immigration. Because we are artists, not lawyer, no doctor, no, I don't know, engineers. I said, okay, there's no way we can do it except if I will do a PhD, which I never wanted to do. I'm not an academic person, but I had 2 masters already. I said, okay, maybe it shouldn't be too hard to make a PhD, which was a bit silly to think that, but that's how I thought. And then we ended up in Australia, in Tasmania, doing a PhD on community engagement. And then in the community work, in the community artwork I was doing, I needed a field work. I needed a place where I can actually work with a community to prove my proposal in my PhD. And then we ended up in the Cradle region, in a tiny community in Lorena with 100 people, like a few families, like I think 30 households. And when they heard that I had like a little experience in theater and theater, they said, oh, can you do something for us? And I was sitting there, I said, I have no props, I have no musicians. And they said, well, I still know those stories. So yeah, okay. So once there was a king, and then bang. And that's how it happened. And he said, oh, do you have another story? I said, yeah, actually, I know a lot. I mean, compare, what I know, not that my repertoire was very small, but I was telling those stories like how I remember them. And then, okay, I went back, I said, okay, I have to read them or check out or, do the research. And then, yeah, that's how it started. So I became the storyteller of the community, which is so interesting from that point of view. I think a lot of storytellers right now, the contemporary storytellers who are working in storytelling as an art form, usually they're coming from an urban or city environment as an intellectual. And I was actually, I think I was very lucky that I became a storyteller by the need in a community, and I was there, the storyteller. So whenever there was any gathering, they said, "Oh, Tamas, tell us a story," like in hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And I didn't really know that time that how valuable is that, how great is that. I'm not on a stage and nothing like not because I had a lot of stage experience before, but it was just so different. And then when we moved away from there and we moved to the capital city of Tassie in Hobart, then I recognized actually this is so different. If you want to do art form, storytelling as an art form, then I have to create those possibilities for myself. And then yeah, so that was how I started the storytelling. That was the beginning of the journey, and then so many things happened after that. But
that's amazing. That's a really great story. So just to go back to the folk element. Do you use instruments in any of your tellings?
No and yes. So what I do, I have a flute, which I always use. I won't say always, but mostly I use when I started performing. And the reason I do that, because it's an old flute. Actually, I don't have it here. I should bring it here. I forget that. Because it's a flute called tilinko. It's a flute that usually the shepherds made, and it looks like a normal flute, like a wooden flute, but it doesn't have any holes to play the melody. So it's like, they call it open tune flute. So the way you make music or a melody, it's like how much air you blow into the flute and how you form your mouth, and you can fully or partly can cover the end of the tube. So it's a very, and it has this very ancient sound, like da, 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 and it doesn't really like it's not really a melody. So when I had that flute, and I always just played for fun. And then in one point when I was thinking about storytelling, when I already did a few years in storytelling, and of course I recognized that the answers for those questions, like, oh, you always tell this story. And said, well, no, all stories are changing. And how can I explain that to people, that stories are born on the telling right there? Because if there's a boy with a bunny, then maybe in the story is not a bunny, but something, but I can say it's a bunny. If it doesn't matter in the story, that can be that bunny in the story, and then that's how stories works for me. So I recognize this flute is actually symbolically showing that. So when I start a show or a performance, I often show this flute play a little bit, because it's also, I have the feeling that it brings people together. So you don't just start like, hey, I'm a storyteller, and once upon, like, I tell them, I'm from Hungary, I have an accent, and I tell a little bit, I just want to feel them. And I said, oh, no, I'm going to play for you a little bit, and I will tell you why. And I play the flute for a minute, and everyone is listening, and it's so magical sound that you really, I think, grant people. And then after I say, so look, this flute doesn't have any holes, so it's not possible to play the melody, the same melody twice. Exactly how storytelling works.
Yeah, amazing.
And you see my storytelling always different.
Yeah, so I guess the flute is like a start point. It's the you're drawing everyone in with that sound, which is lovely. Yeah.
Also a ritual. Also almost like a ritual. And I know other storytellers doing some other rituals when they start storytelling. I mean, some well-known storytellers, some of them like walk into the room before the telling, and then they walk around with incense. If that's your thing, let's do it. But maybe if you were asking me if I'm using music when I'm doing the storytelling, no, I don't. No, I don't.
Yeah,
I know musicians using ukulele, and then they have a song or in the story, or they have songs between stories. I work with musicians, but I only work with musicians when I'm putting a show on, and then we can maybe talk about that a little bit. So for me, it's a very, very fine line, that what is a storytelling show and what is a storytelling performance. And it's only my definition, but that's how I can talk about it.
Look, and that's what this podcast is about. This is about finding what the heart of storytelling is, and you've identified two very distinct types of storytelling. Could you expand more on that, do you think? What is the difference, and what is the heart of storytelling, do you think?
So for me, the difference between a show and a performance is, I call performances those that can appear anywhere, anytime, and usually I wouldn't say it's a how can I say? So easy example, you are invited to a festival, and you have nothing in your hands. Go to the festival, they say 3:30 you are on the stage, and before you the dancers, and after you comes the bagpipe. You are part of thing, and people are come and go, and they're eating a hot dog and a burger, and there's like it's a performance. You go there and you have hopefully enough experience, you're professional enough, you can sense the place, and then what stories you tell. And for me, I don't know which stories I tell until I step on the stage. So I might sometimes I have like an idea, because I don't want to tell some stories because I don't know, I tell them too many times and I don't want to tell it. So sometimes I even on the way there, if I have time, I make like a list of 10, 15 stories I'm thinking to tell, but it's rarely happened that I I go through a list, and it's often said, and I feel the people, and then somebody said, okay, because like, for example, there's a lot of girls, and in the audience, and then there was a story when I think fighting and things. So I said, it's like, oh, do you want to have a story about this and that? And they go said, yeah, let's do it. And the boy said, no. I said, okay, well, after that, maybe we can have a story about this and that. So that's for me a performance. I also call performance when I go in a school and do storytelling there, because it's, again, even if I have a set of stories I would like to tell, I give myself the freedom to choose, and the kids to choose sometimes within some frames. And the show is when I kind of like design and plan everything till a very, very high level. And of course, that's still, I'm not planning, my words. Of course, the storytelling itself has this freedom, which words you say, how long you stretch the story, and how you react on the audience. But I know that the first story is this, the second story, the third story, the fourth. The musicians, I even give script to the musicians, what they play. And then sometimes I stretch it as far. I started to work with an amazing chef, who is also an artist, and she's curating food to the stories, to my shows. But it's not like the way that you have a story and then you eat, but you eat with the people in the story. So I can give you an example for that. For example, I tell sometimes that's a very beautiful folk tale about the king and the prince, and the prince is locked in a tower, very usual. Not really locked, but she's there because she doesn't want to be with her stepmother on an island. And then long story, how it ended up, like a bird is visiting her, and the bird is actually the king itself, a young king. And when the bird flies into the room, the girl doesn't know that it's a person, it's a human. But she has some seeds on the side of the bed that she puts there for herself to eat if she's hungry during the night. So she has those seeds, and everyone in the audience has a little bag with those seeds, but they are not allowed to open it until I don't tell them. And then the girl sees this bird, and she feels that this is so beautiful. The bird just flies in, so she's tried to tame it, and she grabs the seeds and carefully holds her hand out to the bird, and the bird flies there and carefully start eating. And that's when I said to them, and then we can all eat together. And I let the time to people to taste, because they have to know that it's exactly the same seeds, what you are eating with a bird. Or when it's a feast in the story, the people in the audience eating the same food.
Wow, that really brings a whole new dimension to the collective experience of story. If you've got food as well, that's quite extraordinary.
Yeah. But I have to tell you, this is really, really hard. This is a hard ride to organize something like that, because this would never work with just someone. Because I was asked by other people, and they saw a show we did and said, oh, can we do the same things? And they said, well, you can try, but it's not like, we just try to put food and story together. So we worked, that chef I was talking about, her name is Honeychild. She's a Creole American who lives here. So she's also an immigrant. So we are kind of like, have this kind of like same vibe, like we are outsiders here coming from a very deep, rich cultural background. And she calls me like I am a European Creole, because I have so many different bloods in my veins. And I think what we do together is quite unique. And I know it's very unique because I have friends from all around the world. And when I tell this what we do, most of them said they never saw this kind of a level of collaboration, because I don't want someone just gives food to the people. It's not about that. Like, she's really taking time, and I have to tell her the stories again and again, and we are talking about dynamics. And sometimes it's not about really the food they are eating, but sometimes we talk about this moment when this mother first led her firstborn son to a journey. That's when, and she gave the son his favorite food before he leaves, and it's like rice and milk, and this pure sweetness when a mother gave the last kiss to a son. who might never saw again, you know. So that's the depth we want to go. When the people are eating that sweet, it's maybe too sweet because the kiss is too sweet, you know, because you know that's maybe the last kiss. So that's how we do. So for me, that's a show. And I work with the musicians. I rehearse with the musicians. I gave them instructions how to do it, and they have freedom. They have a lot of freedom. For example, the musicians, I never tell the story. That's my. No. I only tell them until a certain level. Then I gave them the script. But until a certain level, we only talks about dynamics. So I tell them, you know, you're a musician, you're a professional. I only work with professional musicians. I'm not saying that, you know, not amateur, but like someone who's so professional can play dynamics and feelings from the heart rather than big rhythm. Like, so no, this is a story when someone's heart is broken. You are a musician. What do you think? And I said, for me, on my experience is this. I said, well, that sounds really good. Let's use that. So we're using patterns in the stories, and they have the freedom. It's more like a jazz. Like I'm also in the show. We're playing together, and there's also a lot of cheekiness because I don't tell them everything, because that's my point. I want to surprise them in the show.
So it's very organic, isn't it? You know, you've got like the foundations, but yeah.
And organized. It's a strictly organized, organic freedom.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
No, it does. No, it's really it's beautiful. And so storytelling, that was performance. Storytelling, what's the difference in that then?
No. So the performance was the schools and the festivals, and show is this when I work with. So that's the show. When I you know, so people buy ticket and they come to the show by their own decision.
Yeah,
because I think that's also a big difference between a performance and a show. And that's why I think when you do a show, again, it's my definition, you can stretch narratives and you can go to risky places more, because people who come to your show, they consciously buy themselves in. And I'm not talking about money. It's like more like conceptual, theoretically. They buy themselves into a risky journey. While you are rocking up in a school or in a festival, you can't really challenge too far the people, because you know they are there for having an ice cream and then patting the horses, you know, or whatever is that, or you know, or something, you know. So you don't really know. So you have to provide them something which is safe to digest. Why, when you have a show, and when I do a show, I always give people like a little description of what the show is about. I give them the titles of the story, so they can, and I also give like a topic that I have a theme, what the show is about. So it's up to them. If they want, they can prepare themselves, but it's still, even if they don't prepare themselves, they step in. It's almost like when you step into a temple, you know. So that's for me, when you do a show, you dedicate yourself for that 1 hour or 1.5 hour to be there. And of course, it's not always happening. Of course, some people might feel uncomfortable and they don't like the show, but it's another question. But they coming, you know, they opt in actively, while the other one, people just there accidentally. And then if they and none of them is actually easier than other, because you know, amaze someone with a story who accidentally landed there because the child was crying, and then they say, oh, let's sit down here, something is happening, listen. And then if they leave the room with that amazement, that maybe it's a bigger achievement when somebody opting in with money with a show which prepared beautifully, you know. But it's also hard work, that. So I think there's no value difference. It's just a different dynamics and different ways who you enter that space and what you can achieve.
Okay, I like the idea of the entering the space. So for you, what is, I guess, the spiritual aspect of it for you? What do you get from the experience of being a storyteller?
I don't believe in the wisdom of storytelling. So maybe it's surprising for you, or have a lot of storytellers. I think I almost like a baker, or I'm like a I don't know, a plumber. It's excellently my tool is stories. So I don't like to put storytellers up in a high rank, and you come to show and I share my wisdom. A lot of storytellers doing that, and I don't really like that. And I would encourage everyone to stop doing that. You are not a wisdom keeper. You know stories, and it's great, and you can share it because you have maybe some skills to do it, but you are servicing your community, so you are just one of them. Even if you, and maybe that's the danger when you start doing shows, because after I did a few shows, even if it's, I mean, Tassie and Hobart is small, but it happens quite often. I walk on the street and I heard someone like, oh, that's the storyteller. I'm not famous, so I'm not famous from that point of view. So, I don't do too many things here. I wish I would do more, but I still can hear that. So shows is a little bit different, because, when you step on the stage and they know that, you organize everything, the lighting is beautiful, the setting is beautiful, there are sophisticated things in the background, so they know that they are coming to almost like a theatrical things. And then because you are the heart of it, or you are the main person, it can be a reflect on them that this is the storyteller. But I still try to not do that. Like, before the show, I go around and have a chat with people, like, oh, is your daughter finished school? And I don't want to just jump out from behind the stage in the reflection of the lights and showing that, I'm the god. So I don't like that. And I go down after the show and I talk to people and we're having jokes and things. But getting back to the question, is it a spiritual? Of course. If it's not that, don't do it. I mean, of course it has to be spiritual, but it has to be spiritual for your own self. And if it's a spiritual experience with someone else, great, you did a good job. But never step on the stage with that, I will give you the spiritual journey of the wisdom of old traditional narratives, will show the purity of that's bullshit. I don't like that, because the reason I don't like that, because I know it is. So it's maybe controversial, but because I know it can do that, that's why I don't believe you have to do consciously acting or overacting that. If it happens, you did a great job. If it not happens, still don't worry, because maybe it will happen next time with one person. If it happens with one person through your shows, you did a great job. So, I don't want people to think about storytelling as something special, though it is special, I know.
So you mentioned community there. So and your first experience with that in the Cradle area was around community. How do you think it helps build community?
I think it can only help building community when you live in a community and you tell stories to your own community. Storytelling as a performance in a school, in a festival, or in a show cannot build community. It's a lie. It's a big lie again. It's again comes from the wisdom. We are the wisdom keepers. It creates a temporary community in that moment, and that's the magic. But then those people would never see each other in their life, or they might live, I don't know, 50 kilometers from each other. So thinking that storytelling creates the community and will save the world, no, that's also not true. If you do storytelling in a tiny community where you live, and you don't have to be like, that community I lived was quite special, because the next village was like 1.5 hour drive, so we were really a tight community. But you can live in Sydney and you put on storytelling as part of your service to a community 2 or 3 times a year on your street, when you say, hey, bring a plate and bring your instrument, and I will tell stories and you can play music. So with that, yes, you can build community. I wrote my PhD about community engagement, and not because I know the thing, but that forced me to go deep and see my own lies on that. So community is when you really build it. It's not community when people are together. Is not community. You have to have something. You work together, you live together in the same place, you believe in things together. It's not community when 100 people comes together in a room. You can create a sense of belonging, for that sense of magic for that short time, but then they all go home and they all have their own problems and their own streets and their own houses and their own neighbors. So yeah, you can do it in your own community physically, then you can create it. Yeah.
Oh, cool. No, I really like that perspective. It's, as someone starting out, it's good for me to, and this is why I'm doing this, is to get the wisdom of people who've been doing it a lot longer than me, so I can make sure I'm coming at the right perspective and being really authentic with what I'm trying to do. Awesome. You said that you we'll shift a bit, folk tales and legends. Do you do any other types of stories?
if you're asking me if I do personal stories, I say no.
Yeah.
But again, this is not a so I never tell a personal story. For example, so me and my wife were like in Himalayas. I like people when they tell that and they're funny, but I think those more belongs to, almost for me, I would like to read them in like a novel rather than tell. I still respect all people who are doing that, but I don't do it because somehow I think, I prefer when a story has some magic in it, and then if something happened in like in almost magical, then tell it. Yeah, but that's not my thing. Of course, I use personal references in storytelling. There are some cases when I start my folktale with a personal anecdote before that, which leads to a story, and maybe that would be like, I don't know, 1 minute, and then I have a 10-minute story. But it's just helping me to lead that, because I want to share that how I come to this story, or why this story is important for me, or something happened with me that lead me to find a story to that, and I think it's appropriate to share. But it doesn't mean the story will not stand itself. It could stand itself, but sometimes I have to. So I don't strict myself, to don't tell it or do it with a personal things. Or sometimes, when I'm telling a story, I could just say, like, that happened a lot of times with me. I let myself to do very free on stage. Like, I don't give a shit what's happening. If I do something wrong, then I'm wrong, and it's great. It's a right to be wrong. So I mean, I will do everything as a professional performer to please my audience, but I still can be wrong. And that's fine. So it happens often on the stage. I'm telling, and then in 1 second I have like bang. It's like, oh, actually, no, I am telling this story. I remember my grandmother had exactly the same blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I let myself, and is it personal story? No, it's me. It's me as a human. Because again, I think storytellers has to be human, and that's the first thing. And then you can be a good performer. But if you're not a human, you try to make it up, you try to be the storyteller, you very easily fall in the trap to be very artificial.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. And the one other thing why I don't tell personal stories, but again, it's taste and all sorts of things. There's all sorts of things going on in people's life which you don't know. And I don't want to, I just sometimes fed up with storytellers that say, oh, I was in love and there was this guy, and I don't interested in your love life, but if you say it's almost the same story, the same narrative, you say, once there was this woman. So that when you distance yourself, then your audience can much easier to say, oh yeah, I feel it. But if you say, I had a girlfriend, or when my mother died, then it's kind of like this personal touch. It's almost distancing the audience because it's your experiments. When you say, there was an old king, you can have this cheekiness and free think that, is it true? Is it not true? Is it happened or not happened? It could happen, and I'm not a king, but actually I know what he's talking about. When you say, when I was and my mother died, and you say, it's very similar, you can, but I don't know. My feeling is, there should be some magic in the storytelling, and should be a distance from real life.
Yeah, no, I agree about the magic. The magic is, I only love stories that have magic in them. If there's an element of magic or something, that I'm right there with that. So do you, and this is like asking, do you have favorite children? Do you have a favorite story that you like to tell?
I was thinking what to tell, and then I'm working on some new stories, like the stories I never told, and there's one is going around my head, which means what I believe, a story become good for telling when you start telling. So you fail a few times and you find like, I should tell it differently. Or you can just practice at home, and then you will suck out the juice from the story when you start telling it. So there's one story I can tell, and it definitely will be a shorter version, which will be when it's kind of like ready. But I can tell that if you want.
Yeah, that'd be good. We might just have a break here, and then we'll come back with the story.
Good. good. I think before I tell the story, I think I have to tell you the background of this. And we haven't talked too much about one very important question, which I'm lucky you didn't ask that question. It's about cultural appropriation, like what stories you tell or not tell, and then not even talking about, you know, sensitive topics in stories, which I was working on that in the last 1.5 year. That question, that whole, how that applies on me. Because I think we tend to say, you know, stories are all around in books and we can access them, and then we are eligible to tell them. And I'm kind of like all right with that, though sometimes I feel like, oh, shall I tell the story or not? And how do I feel when someone, for example, telling a Hungarian folktale, and then I hear people telling Hungarian folktales and then changing things in the stories because they don't understand what is that, and they just change it on. And is it good? Do I have to say, oh, it's not, you know? As I don't know. This is something I'm, yeah. I don't say I don't even have an opinion yet, because it's there's so many aspects. So I'm preparing. I'm preparing 4 or 5 shows. We'll see, 4 or 5, and they all will be concentrated on one country or one tradition, I would say. Because I told you that Honeychild, who I'm working with on shows, she's a Creole with all sorts of really interesting backgrounds, Indian, Mexican, or Italian, whatever. But my background is in Hungary. I had one grandmother was Hungarian, or one grandmother was Hungarian, one grandfather was Schwab, which is like a kind of like Austrian German. The other one was a Croatian grandmother who was talking Croatian to me when I was younger. And then I had my other grandfather who was living in that village, but his name was like not really Croatian. It's a Croatian village. And then when I was younger, and I asked a few times my grandmother like where my grandfather family come from, she always like said, well, yeah, who knows and who cared, like. And I was quite suspicious why she's not telling me. And then I started to create these imaginative journeys that how that man, and not himself, but like his family, get to that village. And of course, it's all imagined. But I started to guess, like, what can it be if it's not Hungarian, not German, and then not Croatian? What could that be? And then I started to feel, you know, what things I resonate, you know, what kind of people who are around in Hungary. And 2 things came up, and kind of like the picture kind of like get together with that, even it's still not true. That I said, okay, what if that one thread in the family was either gypsy or Jewish? 2 things you were not proud of in those times. So because I played music with gypsies, and one of my best friends was a gypsy boy when we played music, so I had this relation, and comes to the question, do I have permission to tell gypsy folktales? I still don't know. But because I have this journey to try to find out where that family thread come from, I said, okay, what if I use this to sense how I feel about these gypsy stories? And I'm really deeply touched by them. So that kind of like, I created a permission for myself to do it. And if I'm wrong, again, I'm wrong. So I did a few Jewish stories, and then I often get from people either nicely or even get it very badly from some stupid people that, oh, you are a stupid Jewish, you look like, I mean, because I look, you know, my face looks like I have a big nose. And I was bullied sometimes, you know. I said, okay, if I was bullied as a Jew, I will tell Jewish stories. I go into it. And then somehow people phone me accidentally when I had to tell stories in a synagogue, a Jewish story for a Jewish musician. So, you know, and that came to me, not so I let myself into this kind of challenges. But the story I would like to tell, and in a short version, is something really resonated with me when I first heard it. And then that also comes from that series of stories, you know, the animated movies. But of course, what you do, you go to the source. So I went back to the source of the story. what they used. Yeah, this is a gypsy story collected far back in Hungary. And it's about an old man whose name was Yosti. And Yosti was a very, very sad man. He turned really old. And he lost his wife, he lost his son, 2 sons, and he was really poor. And I wouldn't say he was the best person in the world. He, gypsies in Hungary and maybe all around the world did things which, were against the laws. But he was a good man. He still was a good man. He loved his wife and the sons, and he lost them. And losing the family and being poor and never had anything, no money and no future, he became quite bitter. And he started to shout out against the sky and against the God, that why is always me? Why I lost my wife? Why I lost my sons? I am poor. I have no money, no food. Why you are always? Why me? Why me always? Why you, God, just look at me and see that how poor I am and all my life is. Just don't do it with me. But of course, nothing happened. So this bitterness was so deep in him. There came days when nights and he couldn't sleep. And one night when he was sleepless and he was living in this in his little rickety hut, he somehow almost like walking and sleeping at the same time. He was wandering around the house and just murmuring like, why me, my God, why me, why me? And somehow he didn't know he ended up in the attic. And he was like, he has this feeling he's looking for something that would give him hope or a joy or something. And there was nothing, like broken pots and broken furnitures and nothing. And he almost laughed when he saw something. He saw the moonlight shining through a little hole of the roof, and the moonlight was shining on a pipe and a little bag of tobacco. And he was not a smoker at all, but he said, I would just smoke a little bit and maybe that would help. I don't know. So he grabbed that old pipe and the tobacco. He walked on, and the sun was coming up. It was morning. He sat down in front of the house on the bench, and he filled up the pipe with the tobacco, and he got some fire from the fireplace, and he lit it. And I'm not sure if you guys ever smoked, and I only smoked when I was so much in love with a woman who was a smoker. But I still remember that smoking has some magic, and even I know it's not healthy, but it has some magic. When you see the smoke just going away, I always try to imagine where this smoke goes. Like, it goes around the world. It's part of the universe. And I always had the feeling that, because it's my breath, it's almost like my soul is going all around the world. So even I don't smoke now, and I smoked it just a little, I know that feeling when you look at your smoke. So this happened with Josti. He was just sitting in front of the house and sucking that pipe and looking at the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful smoke, and something happened. Something strange happened with him, because he started to hear things differently. He that the animals and the trees and everything, it was just suddenly he could hear everything, and he could hear his neighbor saying to his wife that, so remember, if something happens with me, it is 3 steps behind the outdoor toilet. When I hit the goal, never tell to anyone. And Joyce is sitting in front of his house like, what? That's so fun. And he knew that pipe there's some magic in that pipe. So he walked over to the neighbor and said, well, good morning, neighbor. Could you tell me that 3 steps behind your house is a little step or big steps? How did you hear that? Don't tell. Oh my God. And he blushed. The neighbor blushed, and Joyce said, I know I could make you blush. So what? No. And the neighbor said, oh, just don't tell anyone. You know what? I can do whatever you want. And Joyce was thinking and said, you know what? Bring me to someone else when there's a person who is more powerful than you. And the neighbor said, of course, it would be the mayor. Come and I introduce you. I know the neighbor. He's a good friend of mine. They walked to the house of the mayor. And Joyce knocked on the door and said to the servant, tell to the mayor I want to have a chat with him, and I promise I can make him blush, make him be red, say something which he would blush. So the servant reported that, and inside the house there was the mayor having a chat with a woodcutter. But of course, Joyce sat down in front of the mayor's house, see the beautiful smoke, listen, and he could hear the mayor saying to the woodcutter, like, so if we go that night to the other town's forest, we can cut all those trees secretly, but we would need 50 very strong carts to bring all that trees secretly. So Joyce was laughing. He went inside the house and said to the mayor, I promise you, I can make you blush. I know something. And the mayor said, oh, who you are? I don't even know you are a poor man. Said, listen, do I have to help you to find those 50 carts for those trees? And the mayor blushed and said, oh no, oh, do you hear that? Oh, don't tell anyone, please don't tell anyone. Joyce said, well, I will not tell if you take me someone who is more powerful than yourself. The mayor said, more power is only the king. I can take you to the king. I know a king a little bit. They let me to do that. So the mayor took Joyce to the king. And as he was waiting in front of the castle, and of course the guard didn't want to let him in and said, no, let me in. I can make something. I can do something. I can tell something to the king will blush and he will be red and all the face, and I know something. So the guards reported to the king, and the king was just ready to have some dinner. And the king said, well, what? I don't believe in that. Don't let that people in. So Joyce was sitting in front of the castle, said, at least I will just use my pipe, and he did. And as he was piping and the smoke goes, he listened. And he could hear the head chafe and the main advisor talking secretly. So we put the poison in the food, and finally he will be gone, and we get the money from the other king. It happened today. It will be good. It will be good. So Joyce was like, oh my God, I have to save the king. He started to bang the door like, let me in. I know something for the king. He will blush and let me in. Finally, the guard said, okay, come in. He ran in front of the king. He had all the food in front of him. He said, oh my king, oh my majesty, I know something that will make you blush. Just let me to tell. The king said, fine, okay, just tell me. And he was lifting up the first bite of food. And Joyce said, I can even tell you two things. Could you find out which of your food is poisoned? The king blushed like, what? My food? Secondly, what do you think? Was it the head chef or your head advisor, or they all did together? The king blushed and said, bring them here. And they brought those two people, said, what did you do? And they said, we poisoned because the other king gave money to us, and I'm so sorry. And they put them into the jail. Another king said, Joyce, you saved my life. You can ask whatever you want, what you want. And Joyce said, do you know anyone even more powerful than yourself? Well, in this country, no. There's only one who has more people in his kingdom and more powerful, and that would be the devil himself. So Joyce was put in a cart, and the cart went to so far, and there was like a big mountains, and there was this cave, and the smoke and that smells like rotten that came from the cave, and the soldiers run away, said, it's you. You walk in, and that we don't want to stay here. So Joyce walked in, and there was a big door, an iron door. Joyce sat down in front of the gate, got the pipe and smoked. The beautiful smoke went up to the air, and he could listen. And it was the devil's home, a hell. So all like murderers and thieves and all bad people there, and they were talking. They're talking how to cheat the devil, because somehow they get to know that devil secretly keeping the key of the gate of the hell in his hoof, but he couldn't find it. Is it the left hoof or the right hoof? And they were just discussing, and some said it's a left hoof. No, it's a right hoof. We have to find out. So Joyce banged the door, and the red, ugly face of the devil popped up. What are you doing here? Said, I'm here to have a chat with you. You just come in the hell. You have to do something really bad. No. I tell you, I can make you blush. Just let me in and I will tell you something. Come in. So Joyce went in and said, you know that? The people all around here, all these people trying to trick you and steal your key, but they don't know if your key is in the left or the right hoof, but they will find out tomorrow and they will all escape. The devil said, oh, thank you to telling me that. No, I have to hide it somewhere else. Imagine what happened if they all escaped. That would be a shame on me. I am the devil. You know what? You saved my life with this. You can ask whatever you want. Joyce said, isn't anyone more powerful than yourself? Well, there's only one, God himself. Take me there. And that's what you want? Come in. So there's a big cauldron. And Joyce had to sit in the cauldron, and the devil put fire under it. And Joyce said, I'm so stupid. I'm going to die here. But what happened was just a puff, and he lost consciousness. And when he woke up, he was lying in a beautiful field with amazingly colored flowers. He sat up and he started to walk, and there he saw a man, an old man, as we all imagine, with long white dress and white long hair and white beard. And of course, God knows who is this person. He said, Joyce, here you are. What are you doing here? You're not dead yet. Well, I am here because I think I can tell you something that you will blush. And I don't even need to use my pipe. You know, I lost my wife. I lost my 2 kids. I am poor. I'm not the best person in this world, but I did well. You know, I'm a good man. And look at my life. What you did with me. Didn't you know? And then God blushed and said, no, I didn't. There's so many people all around the world. I don't know everything. And Joyce pulled out the pipe and said, doesn't matter anymore. But you know what? Just have a pipe with me. So he lit the pipe and he gave it to God. And God sucked the pipe on, and the beautiful smoke went. And suddenly, and first ever, he could hear everything, every joy and every suffering all around the world. And he blushed second time. The story doesn't say what happened with Joyce T. I imagine maybe he stayed with God. I think they would be a good company. But they say, and I hope it's still true, that God still have that pipe. And whenever he want to hear people and want to see where is suffering and joy and where he can help, he just suck that pipe, look the smoke, and he does his job.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Tamas. That was awesome. I really like that. You know, it had that beautiful rhythm of the 5 places to go. And then I wasn't quite sure where it was going. So there's this, yeah, like where can you go from there? I was thinking maybe death.
That's what I exactly when I heard first when I listened to the story, I listened through this not recording this folk, the animation movie, you know, it's a shorter version. And I was in the car and I started to laugh so loud, like people looked in the other, like, you know, I was driving and my window was done and people looking into my car, why this guy? And I was laughing so loud because this is so fun. Like, you know, I really like to imagine this. And I think it's so gypsy, like, you know, you can imagine yourself sitting side by side God, and just have a pipe with him, you know, like this is so gypsy, like, you know, that's, you know, of course you can do that. So yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. All right. Well, so just one more question to finish off our interview today. What advice would you give to beginner and emerging storytellers?
I think first and foremost, find a master, find a mentor. I don't know, is it because I had those in music or had those in wood carving, but I totally believe in the master apprenticeship relationship. And of course, you don't have to stick to one person, but I think it's really helpful if you find someone you can connect as a human, first of all, and then that person knows something about storytelling. And you don't have to aim, you know, the best storytellers, you know, or something, and you pay for the most expensive, workshop. But find a storyteller who can be your mentor. Find your peers. It's also important. Peers you can trust, and you can really trust that they will tell the truth if you're doing something well, or they tell when they think you're doing something wrong, or they see differently. And then just keep performing and doing, and never stop, and do your research always, books and different versions of stories, and Yeah, and maybe foremost, just remember the only things you have to do, you have to stay and be just a human person. You are just a human. You are not a wisdom keeper. You are not a special person. You are a person who knows stories, and your duty to tell the stories as the baker's duty to do the bread.
Oh,
That's
wow.
it.
That's wonderful advice. Thank you so much, Tamas. Thank you for your time this morning, and look forward to seeing your new adventures when you're doing new shows and things when they come up.
Sorry for the peacocks. I'm working in a place where there's a lot of peacocks, so that's the noise. That's peacocks. That like 3 or 4 peacocks in the background. Sorry,
That's
that's
right.
just so.
I've got a cat, so it's all good. I'll just thank you, Tamas. Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about storytelling and folktale, fairytale, myth, legend, or personal tales, wonder tales, all sorts of stories, and the art of storytelling, and why we really need to continue using it today. You can find more information about me at alyssacurtain.com or at Alyssa Curtain Stories on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I hope that you can find your heart in storytelling.